Hi, Tom. Let's do another video. And this one, pretty interesting story. And it's about a case that I had that deals with the appearing and disappearing of a cross. And what this is really about is we all have our moments. We go through our lives, and sometimes we get very angry at God. And there are times we even get to the point where we may hate God. We may get to the point where we can understand why people suffer, why they go through what they go through. And in this particular case, this has to be with a woman, and she really, things kind of happen sometimes all at one time, and over a short period of time, things started to happen. And she was pretty religious. She believed in God at one point, and she had a lot of faith in God before all this started to happen. Her husband passed away, just a terrible way he passed away. It was the way she described it. He was just in agony, and it was just a lot of suffering that went on, and it took for a long time. He was on and off life support. He had a stroke. All kinds of stuff was going on, and finally, his body succumbed to, he passed away. And the way she described it is that she was deeply affected by this, the way that he suffered. And she's kind of, thinking to herself and actually talking to God in her mind, saying that, how can this be? Why do you have people go through this? And that it really started to affect her, and she kept thinking about it. Then about a month later, her son died. 9 years old, had a viral infection of some kind and attacked the heart. It wasn't COVID, it was just some sort of a viral infection. 9 years old. And that was really kind of just kind of put it all together. She just hated God. She was so bitter at God like nothing else, and she was just absolutely beside herself what happened, and she couldn't understand. First her husband, now her son, 9 years old, and how can a forgiving God do this to people? Why would God do this? And so about what she described, about 2 or 3 weeks later, she's in the kitchen. And she's thinking about all this stuff, this anger and this hate towards God, and she's just feeling it. And then she kind of looks over to the left on the counter, and there's a small little tiny cross. It glitters. I mean, it kind of shined. It's just a small little tiny thing. And it's off to her left. There's some dishes with it. She described it, and she wouldn't even see it. She was just didn't want to even look at it. So she turned away from it, and she went to do something in the kitchen, where she was cooking something, and she turned back to kind of check just to look at the cross again. It was gone. And she's kind of startled by this, but the feelings of hate and towards God, the whole anger at God, and why would go through this? Why would these people suffer? Why her son passed away? Her husband really went through a terrible death. She just couldn't understand why God would do this. So, for about a week, she's kind of going through this, and she's feeling all this stuff about the anger and hate, and she's just, in her living room, she's just thinking about it, contemplating it all, and she just can't understand why God would do this to her. She can't understand why, people have to go through this kind of suffering. And so, another time, she is in the living room. She has a table there, and there's a lamp right there, and she's about to turn it on, and guess what? The cross is there, and it's just sitting. It's right, a small little cross right there, sitting right on the table. And second time, she starts thinking of this. Something else is going on here, but still angry, and she don't want to even look at it. And she said, she talks out loud. Get out of my life, God. Get out of my life. I don't want to. Don't even get out of my life. So she turns and she's kind of watching TV, and then she comes back, and guess what? The cross is gone. Small little tiny cross, what she described it. And so the cross was gone. So this goes on for some period of time, and the cross, appears and disappears every time she thinks about God and her, the anger that she has towards him, and it just kind of appears, and she's going through this I think she described it pretty close to a month and a half. And one time she's back in the kitchen, and she's thinking about God, and she describes a feeling of calm, a feeling of absolute peace. And she's just feeling, it's like it was just overwhelming what she was feeling, the kind of feelings she had about this calm and peace. And sure enough, she turns around and she's looking at the table, the kitchen table there, and there's that little tiny cross. It appears again. And this time, when she's looking at it, she feels this peace and calm. And she hears a voice. And we talked about this before. In her mind, she hears the voice. And the voice says to her, I'm doing okay. It was my time. I had to go. It was my time. And I'm doing okay. I want you to know I'm doing okay. And then the cross disappeared again. And then, and she's trying to remember the voice. It sounded young. And, it almost sounded like, her son, 9-year-old son. And so another time, she's in her den, and she has a computer, and off to the right is the window looking outside, and she's looking at the computer, and she's thinking about this experience that she had with this cross, and this kind of calm and peace. And so she goes to this one particular drawer. She's got pencils, all kinds of stuff in there that for the computer, whatever she needs to do with it. And she opened the drawer, and there it is. The cross right in the corner of the drawer. That tiny little cross. It's kind of sparkling, and it's just glimmering. And she's looking at this cross, and again, and this time, she picks it up, and she holds it, and she feels, again, this peace and calm. And she has I guess the better way to describe it, she had this kind of insight that, like we have talked about before, this universe is far bigger than we can imagine at times. There's more to this story. And she had this kind of perspective that there's a much larger picture there. And this time the cross didn't appear. It stayed, and it stayed in her hand. You know what, everybody? I'm going to tell you something on here. Are you ready for this? She said she's going to send me the cross. So if I get it, and it could be sometime soon, I will put it on video, and you guys take a look at it, and we'll see what happens after that. But she wants me to have it. And I take it as a great compliment, that is a compliment to me, but I'll show it to everybody. But anyway, that is the case of, that sometimes you don't understand what goes on. And even sometimes at the hospital, I told you this before, I see suffering like nothing else. Every single day I see stuff, and I have to do less rights more. And the stuff I see and the images that I see in my mind. And sometimes I have to tell you, I look at this, and this person was telling me the story too, that sometimes you wonder, how could God do this to everybody? But she described too, and we've talked about this in other videos, that there's a much larger picture, everybody. And God has his reasons. And I know it kind of sounds, God has his reasons, but there really is. There's more to this story. And we've also discussed too that now we kind of choose our life. And I got to tell you though, when we take our last breath, we're going to find out all this stuff, whether that, all this stuff is and how it all works. But anyway, I wanted to tell you the story and just kind of, God's there. And I have said this before, and I'll keep saying it again. Why were you created? To be with God forevermore. God is always with you, one way or another. He is always with you. Even when you're angry, even when you hate him, he's still there with you. And just want to tell you the story, everybody. God is always with you forever, ever. And I appreciate your time and going in the video here. But again, I appreciate your time, and as always, I hope your day is going well. And until the next video, thanks again for your time. Appreciate it.